Hey ho, let's go. And a happy Wednesday afternoon, everyone. Hope you're well wherever you are. I am Sean Pugsley Martin. This is episode 27 of Pugsley's Pit. And as we always do, we begin the show asking you all the weekly question, where else would you rather be than right here, right now? By way of introduction, I'm a freelance sports writer for the Albany Times Union, an avid sports enthusiast, a big time homer for my teams without apologies. As always, you can follow the show on Twitter at Pugsley's Pit and taking the podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify. Let's get right to the show today. We're going to talk about the Major League Baseball trade deadline, winners, losers, some strange moves, some even stranger non-moves. And with that, let's bring in an expert, bring in our guest, Brady Farkas, host of the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV Radio in Vermont, weekdays 5:30 to 7. Brady, how are you?
I'm good, Sean. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. No problem. I'm doing awesome. It's I think it's a smooth 90 out there here on planet Mercury here in Albany. Could be 100 tomorrow. So
yeah, the last week and a half or so have been quite toasty.
Yeah, right. Well, that's the way it's going to be. It'll be winter soon enough. Can't control that one. So, hey, let's get right to the trade deadline. Was there, the Juan Soto deal was the big one. The Nats maybe get a huge haul if prospects develop. What were your thoughts on Soto?
I mean, I think it's good for the National League to have a real contender to the Dodgers. I mean, there obviously are very good teams in the National League. I think that Milwaukee is good. I think that the Braves are good. I think that the Mets are good. I mean, I think there's a lot of good teams, but to have a divisional challenger right there for the Dodgers again, last year was great with the Dodgers and Giants battling nip-tuck the whole way and then playing each other in the playoffs. So to have a in-division rival for the Dodgers for the next couple of years, I think that is ultimately good for the sport. We had it a little bit 2 years ago when these two teams were getting into it, and the Padres then fell off last year. So I think it's good for baseball. I think it's good for a small market to prove that small markets can spend a bunch of money. That's what the Padres have done, and they can be real players in there, and they can outbid some of these big market teams. So I think it's good all around. As for the Nationals, I mean, it's not good for them, but I get it. The Nationals are so far away from contention, even with Soto. What's the reason for holding on to him? Just to say that you did and then let him leave anyways in a couple of years? You did that once with Bryce Harper and got nothing for him. So I do get maximizing his value and his return.
Yeah, I thought the Nats, look, it got released that they had offered him a 15-year, $440 million, which sounds crazy he would turn that down, but that's less than $30 million a year on the average value of it. And that's not the going rate, especially for 23-year-olds that can do what he can do. He's under control. I'm fascinated with what, like you said, San Diego. They're in a smaller market, and yet they find a way. AJ Preller is doing everything he can to bring a winner there, and they get Fernando Tatis back as soon as next week, just to make things. I mean, what a team they're looking like for October.
Yeah, you know what's interesting though is, and you are right, but the Padres have 9 consecutive losing seasons, right? Like they had 9 consecutive losing years and 9 consecutive years of pain of small payrolls and accumulating prospects and selling guys. So like this treasure trove of prospects that they built to make all these deals was not built overnight, and it was not built without pain. I mean, 9 years consecutively of losing seasons, several of those in last place. Like, again, it was not built overnight, and it wasn't built without pain. So credit to AJ Preller now for flipping assets when they have value and for building up enough of them over the last couple of years that they keep having more to go to the well with. So that is great, but it was a painstaking process to get to this point.
Yeah. The other thing, taking a step back, a painstaking process, the Mike Clevenger move. He sat for a good year.
Yeah.
And now here he is. And now he's kind of regaining that all-star form as they head into the last 2 months of the season.
I mean, you look at they made a bunch of moves in the last handful of years, right? They get Clevenger, they get Sean Manaea, they get Darvish, they get Blake Snell. I mean, so
Machado.
they've made some big swings in the trade market. Machado, they signed Hosmer, they signed Will Myers before that. They traded for Tatis. I mean, people forget that was a trade deadline pickup for them in trading James Shields to the White Sox to get Fernando Tatis. Like, it seems absurd, but like Fernando Tatis was not a homegrown player. He was part of this, part of the sell-off of a bad team. So I'm happy for the Padres again that they are pulling the trigger on these deals. I'm happy for baseball that baseball gets another good team. Baseball gets another team in a small market. Baseball gets an in-division rival for the Dodgers. I think it's ultimately good for the sport to show that this can be done. But again, 9 years straight of losing seasons. This was not, and I'll be fascinated to see what they do with Soto, because if the Padres come out and let's just say they win the World Series this year, do they go flip Soto again with 2 years left of team control and say, hey, we won the World Series, we accomplished our goal, we've given it to our fans, and now we go rebuild the farm system so we can go and do it again? Or if they win it next year, do they do it with a year of team control? Or do they sign him to $500 million? I don't know what they do. I'm fascinated to see how this plays out.
Other teams, what about the Yankees? The Yankees, they picked up Montas, which as an A's fan, I think is a great move for them. They give up some.
Got an ERA of over 5 outside of Oakland.
Okay. Didn't know that. Very good. We'll see how he does. I love the guy, but we'll see. We'll see.
I think the Yankees got better. I think Lou Trevino is washed. I don't think that he's I don't think that he's a huge asset to the bullpen. But to get Efron,
go ahead.
Yeah, to get Efros is good. To get a defensive-minded center fielder and Bader is good. To go get Montas is good. I think that the Yankees largely did well. I mean, I think that you're talking about the rich getting richer at this point. I think the thing for the Yankees is just going to be, as it's been the last several years, can they stay healthy? And then can these guys that are wearing the Cinderella slipper stay hot? I mean, look, Lou Trevino is not a heralded pickup. Is he going to hit like Johnny Bench the rest of the year? That I don't know. So can he stay hot? Can Stanton get healthy and stay healthy? Can Judge remain healthy, which a lot of these guys never had? Can Rizzo continue? Rizzo's got nearly 30 homers already. So I think the Yankees got better. I think for them it's about health, and can these guys stay at the level they've been at?
Yeah, no Bader. I mean, Bader may not be back until mid-September. I get the defense. The trading Montgomery, I didn't understand, because now you're really kind of putting your eggs in the basket of Herman and Nestor Cortez, who's struggled lately, and Severino coming back healthy. That was a head scratcher. Why would you trade a dependable starter when pitching's a premium in the postseason?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Bader, they're trying to keep Judge out of center field as much as possible and keep him fresh and all that, and get a defensive replacement, and maybe he can play more than Aaron Hicks and all that down the stretch. So I do get it, but yeah, you're putting, again, like you said, you're putting your eggs in some unreliable baskets here. Montas has been hurt this year. You don't know exactly, how his shoulder is. He was shut down for 2 weeks or whatever before the All-Star break. So you're looking at Cole, Montas, and then a whole lot of question marks. Tyone hasn't been very good for the last month and a half or so. Wasn't good again the other night against Seattle. Herman is coming off injury and is iffy. Severino, he's on the 60-day injured list, can't come back now until mid-September anyways. So, and Cortez, you're right. Again, does the glass slipper keep fitting for him? So it has now guaranteed you of having to see one of those other guys in a playoff series, which is what I thought the Yankees were trying to avoid.
Is it stay in the AL East? What I thought was unfortunate, you have an Orioles team that's already hit their win total for last year, I think. And they're not far from the playoffs. They're not far from the wild card. They're giving their fans a great summer so far. And they trade Trey Mancini, who's, his great story. And then even the closer Lopez yesterday. It just surprised me Baltimore didn't maybe kind of hang in there and go for it and see what they could do this year. It's a bonus.
I think you're seeing the good and bad of the third wild card team play out in front of us, right? The good is that there are 7 teams in the AL wildcard race, here on August 1st or August 3rd, whatever we are now. So that's good, right? More teams playing meaningful baseball, more fan bases engaged. But everybody thinks that they're within shouting distance, and if they can just kind of straddle the line, they still might be able to get in anyways because there's this third spot. So you don't have teams clearly identifying themselves always as buyers and sellers. The the Orioles decide, hey, we don't need to go all in because there's a chance that we could get in anyways. In fact, we're going to sell a little bit and build for the future while also kind of playing for now. The Red Sox didn't do anything. They bought and sold in what are weird moves where they, build for the future a bit while also saying, we're kind of within shouting distance. So I think you're seeing the good in that, again, everybody's involved in the race. The bad is that teams aren't as quick to clearly identify themselves.
Is Chaim Bloom, okay, if you're going to bring in Hosmer and Tommy Pham and you're trying to fortify it and, kind of see what happens, that's fine. But why would you trade Christian Vasquez? That's your catcher back there. He runs that pitching staff.
Yeah.
That's what's so weird. I mean, you said it, you're right on. It was just curious moves.
The Red Sox had, in my opinion, a very bad deadline. I think, and I've been a Chaim Bloom defender since day one. And yesterday was the first day I was angry at him. Yes, I could rationalize the Mookie Betts trade. I can rationalize everything else that's been done. Yesterday, I couldn't come to terms with. They didn't buy enough to be buyers. They didn't sell enough to be sellers. The word on the street is that they wanted to sell, but their asking prices weren't met. So then they just decided to hold and play it. Nathan Eovaldi shouldn't be on this team right now. JD Martinez shouldn't be on this team right now. Rich Hill shouldn't be on this team right now. Michael Wacha shouldn't be on this team right now. Kike Hernandez shouldn't be on this team right now, even though he's injured. The Red Sox should have sold. They got better in some spots and worse in others. And I don't know that they're appreciably better as a team than they were a couple of days ago. I mean, they got worse at catcher by getting rid of Vasquez. They got worse in the bullpen by getting rid of Diekman. They got better at first by getting Hosmer. Their farm system is marginally better than it was prior. So I don't think they did a whole lot for the now or for the future. And that bothers me.
What about the Mets? I mean, first they're talking they're in the Soto sweepstakes. If you listen to the rumors, and they pretty much bring in Darren Ruff for the especially with the other question I'd have after that. So I'll tie it in. You got the Cubs that held on to Wilson Contreras and Ian Happ. Happ's got a year left. Contreras is a free agent in October. It seemed like Contreras to the Mets was a perfect fit, and it just never happened.
Yeah, the seller's price, because there's so many teams that are buyers, or so there's so many teams that are around the around the playoff picture, like we talked about. The sellers really, I think felt they had control of the market. So the prices were allowed to be astronomically high. And remember, without getting too deep inside baseball, the qualifying offer is going to stay. So, in the off season. So the Cubs can now offer Contreras a qualifying offer, can have him decline it, and then can go get a supplemental draft pick that's very, very high. And maybe that's more valuable to them than whatever was being offered from the Mets or anybody else that was interested in him. The Cubs had a curious deadline, that's for sure. You sold David Robertson, you sold the reliever the Yankees got, but you kept these guys. So, I mean, there were some curious moves for sure. I'm not as plugged into the National League, but I think Mets fans are disappointed. Although a Daniel Vogelbach, Darren Ruff platoon is better than you give it credit for. I'll just leave it at that.
All right, fair enough. Mariners fan, you talked about fan bases that have suffered. It's been a couple decades. You're a Mariners fan. You got to be excited with Luis Castillo. And give me your early thoughts on George Kirby. I had him in my fantasy league for a while. I heard he may be on an innings limit, but what are your thoughts on the M's? That's a heck of starting pitching staff now.
So what's interesting is a couple of different things, right? The trade deadline can be judged a lot of times based on what your motivation is, right? Like the Yankees made moves to World Series or bust moves. Like that's what their moves are. The Mariners' moves this year are about ending the playoff drought. They haven't been in the playoffs since 2001. It's the longest drought in professional sports in terms of getting to the playoffs. Whatever organization you think is bad and is futile, the Mariners are worse. Like the Cleveland Browns have won 2 playoff games since the Mariners last went to the playoffs. The Sacramento Kings have been to the playoffs. The Lions have been to the playoffs. So like the Mariners have to get to the playoffs. So I want this drought off of my back. So I think that I'm for the move. I think next year is really the move where the Mariners, or is really the year where the Mariners would have a chance to maybe do something special, right? Like I still don't think they're as good as the Astros are. The Astros are a juggernaut. They've been a juggernaut. Next year is probably the year the Mariners have a better chance at it to actually win something. But if they can get to the playoffs this year, end the drought, and have Castillo next year, that is good. What's unfortunate is that what the Mariners really need baseball-wise is offense. They can't hit. They've got like 45 games with 2 runs or less. I mean, like, so they cannot hit, and they've had a ton of injuries to their offense. They really needed bats. But to your point, they have George Kirby, they have Logan Gilbert, they have guys with inning limits who have never thrown this much before. So hitting was the need, but pitching became the necessity because they need to cover up for these guys.
Is Mitch Haniger ever going to get back this season? That would help. He's not going to solve everything, but he would help.
I mean, he's on a rehab assignment right now, has been for about a week and a half or so. I actually think he's close. I wouldn't be shocked if he's in the lineup again by this weekend. I don't know that for a fact, but look, he had 39 and 100 last year. He will definitely help. But that said, you haven't played a major league game since April 27th or something like that. He's only played 9 games all season between injuries and COVID. He's only played 9 games all year. Like, I don't expect him to come in and save the offense. You know, Kyle Lewis is supposed to be doing that right now, and he's hitting 170 through 15 games. And again, you just can't put that much on guys. So they needed a bat. They were forced into getting pitching because of these young pitchers. As to George Kirby, he's a stud. 97, 98 miles an hour, 2-seamer, changeup, slider, throws a ton of strikes. He had something like he had like 6 walks for the whole season or something. Like, he just does not put guys on base via the walk. So the Mariners pitching staff pretends to be very good next year. When you talk about Gilbert and Kirby and Ray and Castillo, and then whoever else is there, you know, Marco Gonzalez, Chris Flexen, whoever.
Yeah. If you look back at the last few days, do you see a team that do you have a World Series projection coming off the trade deadline? Did somebody buy themselves a World Series?
Man, I mean, as a Mariners fan, it's very hard for me to not just think the Astros are incredible. I mean, they do have questions in the rotation. I mean, they traded away Odorizzi, who I'm not a huge fan of, but they traded him away. You know, they've got young guys also. Valdez, Javier, Luis Garcia, McCullers. What is he going to be when he comes back? Like, beyond Verlander, there are questions there. But I just think they're so good. I think they're so versatile. I think they're so deep. I have a hard time not seeing the Astros, you know, get in here and do some real damage. As for the NL, I mean, again, the easy answer is the Dodgers. I'm less plugged in to the NL. I don't think the Padres catch the Dodgers in the division, you know, with 10 games out or whatever. So
11 and a half. Yeah.
11 and a half. So they're going to have a harder time. I think they're probably a better bet for next year to maybe run with it the whole season. So I guess I would say Astros and Dodgers.
As a bait, look, I'm an A's fan. We're finishing last. Well, maybe not. We may be up and get fourth. I want to see the Mets pitching staff healthy in the playoffs with Scherzer and DeGrom and Tejan Walker. Even Chris Bassett can give you some big innings, because that pitching, and Diaz is having a great year in the bullpen. That pitching would be fun to watch them play San Diego and/or the Dodgers.
Well, hey, great pitching is always fun to watch in October. You got some guys that have been there before with the Mets. The bullpen, I know, is giving Mets fans some consternation. They're leading to Diaz. Diaz has been great. So, you know, it's always fun to see the best against the best. So if the Mets are if they have to make the playoffs, then yes, I'll be excited to see they're pitching against some of these other offenses.
Yeah, it'd be fun to see. So, hey, Brady, what else? Where else can the viewers find you before we let you go? What else you got going on?
Yeah, they can check me out on Twitter at WDEV Radio Brady. A lot of senseless Mariners tweets and a lot of New England sports content. So Patriots, Celtics, Red Sox, Bruins, University of Vermont, and you know, we go from there. And you know, already looking forward to the next UAlbany UVM hoop showdowns.
Awesome. Well, look, I don't usually root for teams within my own division, but I'm rooting for the Mariners. I think they're a fun team this year, especially Julio Rodriguez. We didn't even talk about him.
Well, he's injured right now, so I'm just praying. I'll give him my wrist so that he can come back and play here. Hopefully, he'll be back soon. But the Mariners they're unhateable. They've been losers for 20 years. They're
they haven't done anything with anybody.
they're the Charlie Brown of professional sports. So they deserve to kick the football one time.
I agree. I'm rooting for you. Make the playoffs.
That's the goal from your lips to God's ears.
All right. I really appreciate you jumping in the pit this week. Hopefully we'll have you again real soon.
Sounds good, Sean. Thanks. Anytime.
All right, take care. Mr. Brady Farkas joining us here this week. Hey, let's go right to the My World segment part of the show. The one trade deadline thing I didn't get a chance to get into with Brady was what the A's didn't do. Trade Montas, and I hope he does well. Hope that 5 ERA comes down. With New York, he was always a good athletic, loyal, give you everything he had. I wish him well with New York. I see all the Yankee games here, which is not usually a good thing. So announcers are garbage, but I'll look forward to watching him pitch. But one message I sent the Yankee fans on Twitter the other night: if you're going to watch your game and Lou Trevino comes in, whatever your allotment for stress management caused by sports is, whether it's 8 beers, 10 beers, 12 beers to kind of get you through the rough parts, double it. If 12 beers is your max, you better have a case of beer on hand anytime Lou Trevino comes into a game. That's less than a 7-run lead for your team because you can get him out after 4 of those runs come through. Even if he does come in, he's not going to close. But if he gives you a hold, it's going to be a tough hold, like a whip of 2.5. He'll put a couple guys on. He may wiggle out, but it's an ugly thing. The 2 A's that I thought were going to get traded did not. Ramon Laureano and Sean Murphy. I'm happy they're staying, right? You got some good haul from the Matt Olson trade in the offseason, promising pitchers out of the Yankee farm system. Didn't get one of the shortstops, but didn't think you would. But I'm happy Laureano and Murph stay. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in next year. Do want to acknowledge horrible news to wake up to this morning. Vince Scully passed away, 94 years young. Best voice in the history of the game. One of the best. I hate the Mount Rushmore thing. I think it's overplayed, but on the list of broadcasters all time, he's on it. Just a great voice, and you sat down and you think you'd listen to your uncle describing, or your grandfather describing a baseball game to you when you watch Vince Scully with the Dodgers, and so many more on the national level too. He was great in the NFL. A lot of people may not realize or remember. He was on the call for the catch game, Joe Montana to Dwight Clark to beat the Cowboys in the NFC title game. So Vince Scully, he could do it all, but he was baseball. He was the Dodgers, and he will be missed. On a good note, we're going to end the show on a good note this week. Hey, Raider Nation, we're 24 hours away, 24 hours plus. I know it's the Hall of Fame game. I know it's preseason. I know many of the best players are not going to play. I don't care. I get to see the silver and black on the football field tomorrow night when the Raiders play the Jaguars in the Hall of Fame game. And there's one goal. I don't care what the score is. Don't get hurt. Don't get hurt. Denver just lost Tim Patrick, wide receiver, yesterday for the year with an ACL. Things are going to happen in practice. Games, nobody of note's really going to play tomorrow. I wouldn't expect that. Just don't get hurt. Even any of the depth guys. Don't do it, man. Just don't do it. You got to be healthy for the NFL regular season. That's tough enough to do all the time. So, and on that note, hey, before we cut you loose, I'm going to give a shameless plug to my book, Dear Liam Manoa, Letters from Daddy. And hopefully have an announcement on that next week. An update with the book that I'm real excited about, but I'll save that for next week. So, on that note, have a wonderful week, everybody. Thanks again to Brady Farkas for joining us today. Have a great week. Let's talk to you soon.